What's going on, everybody? It's that time again. The AllSooners Podcast, episode 170 on this Wednesday, January 18th, 2023. Josh Callaway in Oklahoma City, Ryan Chapman and more, John Hoover in Tulsa. Gentlemen, how are we doing?
Great. Got some rain in Tulsa today. Fired up about that, as always.
Yeah, we got a little sprinkle. Scout the dog found every single mud little pile on the morning walk this morning. I was like, good God, there's not enough water for it to be muddy all over, and you have found every single one. So shout out.
Hoove, I don't think of you as an old guy, but being happy about the rain ages you a little bit. That's an old man move to be like, we needed it. We needed it.
Yeah, the land is dry.
I'm with Ryan. The rain, I get why we literally need rain, but the dog situation is just so annoying on the wipe her feet every time, and she finds it. If there's any mud out there, she will find it.
See, we've got doggy doors going out into the yard from the house to the garage to the backyard. That's why I worked so hard last year planting all that grass and getting all that grass ready to go. So because the dogs, otherwise it was mud.
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah, we'd get mud. Every time it would rain, we'd get muddy footprints in the house. Like, you know what? This is annoying. Let's plant some damn grass and get this over with. So, yeah, we worked really hard at that grass last year, and I'm just praying that crap doesn't die. And that is the old man take from John Hoover on this bad boy.
And hence his excitement for the rain.
Yeah, hence needing the rain. All right, it all made sense. It added up there at the end. Last week's show, if you were with us, we went about an hour and a half. I don't think we're going that long this time. We had a lot of ground to cover. This time, we still have some ground to cover. We're all Sooners for a reason. We talk about it all. We cover it all. But been a little bit of quieter waters last week or so. And we're going to wrap up here in the first segment with the transfer portal. The window is closed, right, officially. Is it today? Who?
Today, midnight. Yeah, closes.
Okay, so still a little bit of time, technically. But for the most part, Oklahoma.
And then there's 48 hours that they put their name in today. They beat the deadline, and then the school has 48 hours to grant them their.
Confusing.
Yeah, so we've got until Friday. Expect some news, some fringe news until Friday at least.
So we're pretty close. Oklahoma, we're pretty close to the end of the transfer portal. We're going to go ahead and kind of wrap up the recent moves Oklahoma's made in the portal, and we'll kind of summarize how we feel like the Sooners did. With in mind, like who said, they still technically could make some last-second adds here before the end of the week, but we'll kind of wrap up this entire cycle in terms of how do we feel like Oklahoma did, what they lost, what they gained, all that good stuff. We'll do that in just a minute. Let's first start off with recapping what they've added since the last show. Stanford offensive lineman, offensive tackle Walter Rouse, I hope I'm saying that correctly, comes in from the Cardinal. This guy's a veteran. He's played a lot of football, and most people seem to just think as a slam dunk that he will be one of Oklahoma's starting tackles next season. Hard to really argue with it when you look at what he's done, how much football he's played for Stanford, a program that's obviously very well known for producing big guys up front at a pretty high level. This seems like a pretty good get for Oklahoma, maybe one of the more sneaky, underrated, best ones that they have in this cycle, especially if he is able to slide right into one of those tackle spots, week one next season.
Well, the cool part for me, I love rivalries. And the cool part is he's sliding in on the left side, we presume, to take Anton Harrison's spot, right?
Right.
He's going to play right next to a former Cal transfer. Cal versus Stanford, they hate each other. So bunch of smart guys that don't like each other. Now, that'll be fun to see those guys together, see what kind of, get one of them aside and ask them a question about the other one, being at Cal, being at Stanford, whatever. But, man, 40 games he started in his career. He's got a bunch of experience. I think I counted up on Pro Football Focus 2,500 snaps as an offensive tackle. I think he'll fit in nicely, and he's the perfect kind of medicine for what Oklahoma needs right now, and that is competition, high level competition at the offensive tackle position.
Yeah, and the interesting thing will be is not just with Rouse, but if McKay Mattier moves back to right guard where he played at Cal, we saw that in the Cheez-It Bowl where Savion Byrd played left guard. Maybe two bodies, maybe one Savion Byrd and one Andrew Rame is enough to keep the Cal and Stanford guys off each other in jest. But yeah, no, this is one of those absolute no-lose additions. If he comes in and does everything that we think he'll be able to, then Oklahoma's locked down their left tackle and their right tackle. Rouse played left tackle at Stanford. That means that Tyler Guyton can slot right back over at right, where They tried to flip Harrison and Guyton in game 1, didn't like it. Tyler Guyton played right tackle for the rest of his appearances this past year. And so there's not any need for offseason shuffling, having to relearn, hey, I stepped this way first instead of that way first. It's like a mirror, all that stuff. That's the best, and then at the worst case scenario, if there's no injuries, if Rouse isn't starting, that means that someone has supplanted a guy with over 2,500 snaps of experience, which is even better for your offensive line. So that gives you time to continue to develop Jacob Sexton, Aaron Parks, those guys behind Rouse and Guyton, and it gives this offensive line, it feels like for the first time since maybe their Joe Moore Award-winning season, that we can start talking about guys in the mix of, hey, they've got some actual depth at tackle that we've seen play before a little bit outside of just, well, they're unknowns and they've got stars beside their name and all that stuff. And you package that with what Bill Beanbo did in this 2023 recruiting class. There's no pressure on those guys now to come in and immediately have to, like Caden Green doesn't have to come in and fight for a spot out of necessity. If he's doing that, it's because he's that good. We're starting to see that depth. And I think that with the entire portal cycle, what we're going to talk about here in a minute, Oklahoma has some real depth along both sides of the ball. I don't know if it's playoff depth or anything like that. Don't need to get way ahead of yourself, but this is a team that had been really talented in 2020, 2021, 2022 with the first line, and then you're just hoping that 22 guys go through the season without getting hurt.
And real quick on Rouse, 6'6", 318. 21 he was a all Pac-12 honorable mention, and I think it was 2019, all freshman All-American in freshman All-American in 2019. Biomechanical engineering was his major. He arrives as a graduate. Guess what else he was? He was a finalist for the William Campbell Trophy, which is the academic Heisman, which is like, if you're on that list, you're probably one of the 3 or 4 smartest guys in the country, academically speaking. And he was. That's a Ty Darlington award. That's a Gabe Eichert type award. When you talk about chemistry on the offensive line, this is a guy that's going to be able to come in and fit exactly where you need him, whether it's right side, left side, either side doesn't matter. He's got the makeup, he's got the mentality, and he's certainly got the experience.
Yeah, biomechanical engineering at Stanford as a William Campbell. Yeah, I mean this guy's he's going to make us feel like idiots when we talk to him because he's going to, he's a smart dude. It sounds like you guys are in agreement. Who you kind of talking about? It's a little fluid. He plays left tackle and Guyton plays right, or because the only thing that Gabriel being lefty is what makes it a conversation, right? That you could theoretically try to get him on the blind side, but comfort versus blind side, I guess, is really the question there. But it sounds like you guys think that probably leave him at left and let Guyton play right.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, and if you remember back 1 year ago, last spring, this was kind of a big talking point with Jeff Levy and Bill Beanbo. Does that change anything? Lefty coming in, all that stuff. One of the big advantages Bill Beanbo pitches everyone in recruiting is that because of their scheme, it's pretty mirrored and pretty similar. So you're not just, if you're a left tackle, we're not just recruiting you to play left tackle, we're recruiting you to play tackle. So it doubles the opportunity for you. That's one of the recruiting pitches Oklahoma has. And then Jeff Levy himself was like, yeah, we don't view that as a real difference that really affects anything. So if it's a flip-flop, I don't think it'll be because of that. It'll be because they've tried it in practice and both guys feel more comfortable on the other side, which would just be probably a little surprising considering Guyton played on the right, Rouse played on the left.
Well, should be interesting to see how that looks. And Bill Beanbo's group looking pretty good, looking pretty solid right now as we, not near spring ball, but look towards spring ball here in a couple of months. Other addition that they made, Texas A&M transfer Blake Smith. He's a tight end. Basically, it feels like on the most simplistic level, if Austin Stogner is your Braden Willis, Blake Smith is your Daniel Parker. He's more of a blocking guy. He only has a couple of career catches with the Aggies. He's still relatively young, just a couple of seasons under his belt. But, fans are kind of unsure what to make of this ad because of, like I just said, very little actual production in the pass catching game. But Stogner is your guy to be tight end one. You have these other young guys coming up, Caden Helms, Jason Llewellyn, who we talked about before. It kind of seems like this is just a nice little depth, kind of bridge the gap ad here. Like, I don't think a lot's going to be asked of Smith. It's just kind of more as he's big, another big body, maybe do some blocking for you. That's at least how it feels to me.
Yeah, he'll fill the Daniel Parker role is
Yeah.
what it feels like. Again, referring to our friends at Pro Football Focus, Braden Willis was the best run blocking tight end, one of the best 2 run blocking tight ends in the country. Talking about volume snaps, talking about guys who played a ton of snaps. He was, I think, number 2 for the season nationally as a run blocker. So very underrated as a run blocker, Braden Willis was. That's something that's going to be missed, because I get the feeling that Austin Stogner, more of a downfield, flex out, Trent Smith type tight end, wants to catch a lot of passes. Braden Willis, being the utility knife that he was, Mr. Sooner, he was kind of a guy. He was second on the team in yards and catches, first on the team in touchdowns. He did everything, so he filled both roles. Parker, the only guy, I think 250 snaps for Parker. He was the only guy on the team who blocked at a higher grade, run blocked at a higher grade than Braden Willis. So it's going to be an interesting dynamic to slide Blake Smith in here, kind of see where he can fit, see what his role is. 6'4", 255. It sounds like he's a very kind of a authoritative blocker, kind of in the Daniel Parker mold. So I assume that's what the Sooners coaching staff is going to want to do with him.
Yeah, and I think if you remember back to the initial Cheez-It Bowl press conference, the day of it being announced, where Brent Venables and Mike Norvell were on the Zooms, Brent Venables was kind of talking about the portal philosophy and how Oklahoma's going to attack it, and he dropped in that, hey, this is like the last season where you're traditional, you get 25 scholarship spots for high school signees, you get is it 7 or 8 for portal guys? I always think it's 8 because Sark dropped 33 last year, which is the quote that was kind of blown out of proportion a little bit as far as Texas moving the roster over.
Yeah, 32 is the number.
Yeah, so good job, Sark. When you talk about that, Brent Venables basically said that we're going to look for anyone that we think can help this team, because then everything's going to reset and you're back to kind of your traditional numbers. So for me, this was kind of a move where if Smith can come in and be a plus in the blocking department, great. If not, you've got a veteran guy in that room that can help you as you're bringing in Cade McIntyre, the freshman, and then you're moving Helms and the well and along. So seems one of those kind of win-win things that you either get the veteran presence or you get the veteran presence and some blocking ability, and maybe he blossoms into someone that can catch 8 or 9 balls a year, something like that, just because that's not what he was asked to do at Texas A&M, is catch the football.
One subtraction for Oklahoma in the portal to tie it up here this week. Not a huge one. Marcus Alexander hits the portal just yesterday. We were kind of joking about it a little bit. We're at the basketball press conference. We're in this news that just came out a little bit just shortly before. We were joking around, me and some of the other guys on the beat, of not a lot of emphasis on being there for spring practice for Marcus here. He waits until January 17th to officially announce he's in the portal, very late in the game. But this was a guy who was a former 4-star recruit from my rivals and just never really played. On his OU bio, they only have him listed as playing against Missouri State in the 2020 opener. That's the only time he ever saw the field in 4 years at Oklahoma. So I don't know. We'll see where he winds up. But I mean, never really had much of an impact. Not a whole lot to say here. Just kind of, another guy hits the portal that was kind of real down on the depth chart.
I think this is why you sign so many offensive linemen and so many defensive linemen, as you expect.
Yeah.
Some of them just will never be able to make that transition. And no knock against Marcus. By all accounts, he's one of the popular teammates. His teammates love him. I hate to see him go and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, 4 years, 1 game. Missouri State during the pandemic, 2020. So he'll be a guy that catches on probably somewhere. A lot of bodies in the transfer portal who are not going to play at a similar level or higher. People jump in the portal thinking, yeah, I'll show them. They think I can't play here. I'll go to a rival or something. And there's no scholarship for them. And they have to go to FCS, or they have to go to Division II or something like that. They have to go to a Group of 5 school even, which is probably a good thing at this point for some players to be able to land a Group of 5 offer. But we'll see what happens with Marcus.
Yeah, I mean, if you just look at some of the other Oklahoma entrants into the portal, Theo East obviously landed at Missouri, but then you look over to the other side of the ball, You've got Eaton to Texas State, Ellison to Memphis. It's not always just State. Hops in the portal to Oklahoma, and you pop out on the other side at a Ohio State, Florida, Michigan, anything like that. And so this is another one of those guys, much like Bray Walker, an earlier entrant into the transfer portal that came in highly touted with a lot of stars next to his name on the offensive line, just never really factored in for one reason or another. And so, yeah, to your point, Hoove, that's why it's important to sign 4 or 5 guys a year instead of doing the quality over quantity and only bringing in 2 guys and then having to hit the portal for depth, because that means you have to hit on those 2 guys. You have to have 100% hit rate. Otherwise, you're having to go to the portal for 4 bodies instead of just 2. So that's why I think that Oklahoma's on a much better path going back to just normal numbers in their recruiting classes for offensive linemen, defensive linemen, stuff like that.
So, with that in mind, obviously, you know all the exits. The big ones, Theo Weiss, David Agwebu, the most notable, I should say, and then a laundry list of guys who we just never really saw a whole lot of. They've added, I believe it's 12 players. I'll rattle them off real quick. Jacob Lacey, Desan McCullough, Austin Stogner, Reggie Pearson, Luke Elzinga, the punter, Trace Ford, Caleb Schaefer, Rondell Bothroyd, Devon Sears, Andrew Anthony, and then Walter Rouse and Blake Smith. I think that's all of them. And like we were saying just a little bit ago, there's still a little bit of time here to potentially add somebody else if you want. But that in mind, those 12 guys, what Oklahoma has lost in the portal this cycle, how do you feel like they did? If you had to give it a letter grade, how do you think this has bared out for Oklahoma? Is it they addressed all their needs? Is there something that they left down the table? How do you feel like it went for the Sooners here?
Letter grade right now is an I. Incomplete. I hate to cop out, but the fact is that we don't know how these guys are going to fit in with their other teammates, how they're going to adapt to the system, how they're going to take to the coaching, all that stuff. It's an age-old problem for coaches. Hey, yeah, come play for our program. Come in here and be a Sooner or wherever, insert your school here. And it just doesn't work out for them. So it happens, and I don't think Oklahoma's going to have a 100% hit rate on this group. But I'll say this again, but the guys that they lost, the guys that left in the portal hadn't played for the most part, except for the 2 that you named, Agwebu and Weiss. The other guys just hadn't contributed, as Brent Venable said, in any way. Now, you flip that and look at what's coming in. You've got 4 defensive linemen. OU needs a buttload of defensive linemen. You've got a punter. OU needs a punter. You've got 1 wide receiver. OU needs some wide receivers. They probably need 1 or 2 more, and they'll get those in May, I would assume, when the portal opens back up, May 1 through 15. Yeah. They got a linebacker. They probably could have used 2. They got 2 tight ends. They needed at least 1. So they are – and Reggie Pearson, the safety. That's a position where they're probably going to need more help, a couple of more bodies as defensive back. So they have addressed their needs in a very good way, which is a lot of players coming in that are experienced from other schools. So do those guys translate? Do they come in and play? Do they contribute right away? Do they hit? Do they start? We'll have to wait and see on that one. But it looks like right now, from the players that they lost who hadn't played to the guys that are coming in that they need at those positions, it looks like an A.
Yeah, I'm just trying to do quick math here. Portal additions that Ryan thinks will be a starter when Arkansas State rolls around. Rouse at left tackle, Stogner at tight end, McCullough somewhere in the linebacker core, probably at Cheetah.
Yep.
I would roll out Bothroyd over Reggie Grimes probably immediately based off what he's done at Wake Forest. Elzinga, the punter, that's 5. And that's nothing to say of what the rotation looks like with Jordan Kelly, Isaiah Coe, Jacob Lacey on the inside.
Yeah.
So if all
Trace
that
Ford,
pans
right,
out, I think Trace Ford is someone that'll just, due to the wear and tear of injuries, I don't know, might be a starter, but feels like a heavy rotation guy, but definitely in your rotation immediately. So if you're looking at 5, potentially 6 starters, a 7th that you figure as long as they're all healthy is going to be in the rotation. That's a good haul for any portal class. Did they hit a home run with a Jahmyr Gibbs or something like that? On paper, maybe not right now. We'll have to see. A guy like McCullough can develop into a really impact linebacker based off what we've seen in 1 year. it's nothing but on paper for me, like Hoove said, an A as long as everyone contributes. Now, we've seen guys come in and it takes them half a year. In CJ Colton's case, he just couldn't get there early. We've seen a guy like Trey Morrison play maybe not as much as we thought he was going to play on the back end. Like, it's not a guarantee, but on paper, what we know right now, looks like Oklahoma did a really good job addressing pretty much all their needs, except, like Hoove said, maybe an extra wide receiver or two and a kicker.
And a kicker. We'll see. It looks like it's going to be the Zach Schmidt show in 2023.
What's interesting, when I threw that out there, the positions that they need in the transfer portal, people were like patting me on the back. Good job, Hoove, on the kicker thing. We really need to up the competition at kicker, man. When you miss a third of your kicks and you're, what was it, Ryan, 92nd in the nation in field goal percentage, you missed a field goal in each of the three of the four games that you lost by a field goal. Was it all four?
2 at West Virginia. Missed 1 against Tech, the huge one. Missed 1 against Florida State. I don't know if Baylor was.
Yeah, it was. Baylor was the other one. So
yeah, that's tough.
You've got to upgrade that position. That is a scoring position. That is a very specific position that you cannot miss at. And to, Zach Schmidt for, hey, you love him for the receiving skills and the touchdowns and all that good stuff, right? And he looked like he had it all together at the beginning, but I think he finished the November and December 4 of 9 on 3-point tries. So that was that's not ideal.
Makes you wonder, if Gabe Burkich had just decided to come back. Did Oklahoma win two more games this year just by having their kicker come back? And
2,
by the way,
3 or maybe 4. That's 100%. And Gabe Burkich
might now,
if he does that, makes those November kicks, he might be on his way to the NFL. Somebody might scoop him up this spring.
Yeah, that's the whispers part of it. Is Gabe Burkich is not on a team right now, so that didn't work out for either party at all. Yeah, I agree with you guys. I mean, the portal, when you take into consideration what they lost, which is almost nothing of major consequence. I'm not going to say you wouldn't have preferred to keep Theo Weiss and Aguebu, but the reality is you're going to be fine at those spots. They added way more useful pieces than they lost, so it's an A for me as well. We'll see how these guys shake out. Obviously at this time last year, we at least I won't speak for you guys, but I felt like Jeffrey Johnson's going to be potentially all Big 12 level, and he had a okay year, but it's hard to project what exactly these guys are going to do. But on paper, it looks pretty good. So we'll see. A for me, and we just couldn't get enough grades. If you want some more grades, report card series on AllSooners.com. I want to make sure to plug that real quick. We recapped every position group of the team, including the coaching staff and special teams. We gave all of our letter grades. A lot of great stories from Ryan, and Ross wrote a couple as well. I have the video parts of it as well. And so check that out, AllSooners.com. Kind of a nice little wrap up to the season as well.
Yeah, I was just going to say real quick to that point you made with Jeffrey Johnson. Here's the other thing. Of all those guys we just talked about as ones that were penciling in to be big contributors for Oklahoma next year, Bothroyd, what's the jump he's making? Wake Forest, ACC to Oklahoma. McCullough, Big Ten, Indiana, coming to Oklahoma. Trace Ford, Oklahoma State. Lacey, Notre Dame. You look over to the other side of the ball. Rouse, Stanford, Stogner was at Oklahoma. He can do it at this level. I think that's why I'm a little more confident in this year's portal class, because it's a lot less of, okay, can this guy make the jump up? Can this guy make the jump up? It's no, this is what their production's been. So we have a baseline. And then if they get the coaching and develop, then anything other than that is congrats. That's a boost to what you're kind of trying to pencil in there.
That's a very good point. Very good point. So we'll see how that bears out. Looks pretty good on paper. Excited to see some of these guys, or all of them, I guess, in spring. And then we'll see, like who said, what they do in the portal, after spring ball, because more guys hop in, obviously, after the spring. Oklahoma made some big additions last year at that time, and we'll see what they do when we get there later on after the spring game and all that good stuff. All right, we'll take a timeout. We'll come back, dive into some other housekeeping items. Lots of pieces of news. We'll hit it all, kind of just lots of kind of all over the place. A little hodgepodge second segment. We'll dive into that next right here on the AllSooners Podcast. On Twitter, you can follow AllSooners at @all_Sooners. Ryan is at _Ryan Chapman. Who's at John E. Hoover. I'm at Josh M. Callaway. Our website is AllSooners.com. We are a Fan Nation affiliate, part of the Sports Illustrated Network. All right, segment 2 here. This is going to be the housekeeping segment of the show. We're going to bounce around a little bit. We're going to start with Mr. Zac Selmon. taking over as the athletic director at Mississippi State. If you're unfamiliar with Zac, basically, for lack of a better term, he's kind of Joe Castiglione's right-hand man and has long been kind of considered the heir apparent to Joe C whenever he decides to, hang him up at Oklahoma. Now, he still may be, obviously, just because he's going to Mississippi State doesn't mean he can't come back down the road. But, for me, and you guys can obviously dive into what the thing that jumps out to me the most is that he probably doesn't make this move if he feels like Joe C is going to retire soon, right? I mean, that's the obvious connection that I made here. So interesting little maybe read the tea leaves in terms of what Oklahoma's doing. SEC move coming up. And, Zac Selmon, who is related to the Selmon brothers, if you're is Dewey is his father, correctly?
Dewey's his dad, yep.
And he takes over Mississippi State. So quite the move for him. He's very well thought of. Anybody who's ever had a chance to meet him or talk to him, he's a very nice guy. And obviously we'll see how he does over there. Wish him luck.
Yeah, super, super sharp. Love talking to Zac every time I get a chance just to shake his hand and say what's up. He's a guy that's going to be missed at Oklahoma, straight up. He's been thriving in that role since Joe brought him back in 2015. Norman Kidd brought him back. He played tight end, was a 4-year starter at Wake Forest, and then he comes back to Oklahoma to get into athletic administration like his uncle, Leroy, right? So it's just a huge deal for him to be able to get that job. Are you kidding me? Athletic director at Mississippi State, first black athletic director they've ever had, makes history in Starkville. So they got a good one. They hired a great one. But the headline for us, of course, is Joe C's 65 years old. And at some point we've been wondering for most of the last, 5 years, hey, at what point is Joe C going to hang it up? Joe C could have been governor of Oklahoma years ago, right? He's that good. He's that popular, right? He doesn't want any part of that because being the AD at OU is a much better gig. But is he going to retire soon? Is he going to retire eventually? He's 65. Zac has always, ever since he's come back and you've seen the fundraising really blow up, you've seen him reach out and establish relationships with a lot of the donors. Zac has been a guy that we've said for years now, one of these days, Joe C's going to retire, and that's probably who they're going to replace him with. And I think this is a piece of that mechanism where Joe C's advice to him, career advice, is not stay here and learn under me for a few more years. I'll teach you the ways of the world. No, Joe C's advice probably would be go out and see if you can do it at a big school, be an athletic director at a big school in the SEC. And then when I do retire, you'll have that under your belt. So I just think this is a win-win for everybody at this point. Zac's an exceptionally gifted fundraiser, communicator, personality, all that good stuff. So he's going to do great there. And I still say this is a piece of the puzzle. He's going to come back to Oklahoma. That's my prediction. On Wednesday, January 18th, 2023, he's going to come back to Oklahoma and be the next AD.
We'll revisit in episode 512.
Yeah, the general consensus or vibe, maybe we're talking about vibes, not facts. Facts, vibes. The general vibe around Oklahoma is when this was announced was this is not a goodbye, this is a see you later type move. And to your point, Hoove, it's not just hey, you went out to North Texas, or no offense to North Texas, but you went out somewhere and you were an AD. Like, no, you're going to the SEC. You'll know the lay of the land. If it works out for Zac Selmon, which I think he'll be incredibly successful at Mississippi State, and then he does come back to Oklahoma, you're not having to relearn anything. He'll already have those relationships. He'll have a different level of respect as one of the guys that's in the room making the decisions, as opposed to, the right-hand man and all that stuff. But and for me too, I kind of get the feeling, and this is not talking to Joe or anything like that, but I really feel like Joe Castiglione wants to see this Venables transition through to get this football program set up back to where they're not having a 6-7 season and in the Cheez-It Bowl overmatch against the Florida State team, something like that. He can get Venables back to where I know Venables wants to be, Joe Castiglione obviously wants to be. Then you're like, okay, now the football program's humming again. He's made great hires in Baranchek, and we'll see what Porter Moser can do as he continues to battle through the Big 12 slog and move to the SEC, which will be a breath of fresh air. He'll have set up the athletic department in a really great spot. But yeah, just from what I've learned too, it's you hear from inside the building. Zac Selmon's a guy that was kind of a glue guy in that athletic department that is an excellent go-between between all the different arms and branches. And he's kind of one of those guys that brings everyone together, makes everyone continue to feel like we're all one team working in the same direction. So that just shows you the kind of guy that he is, that he recognizes, hey, I can come and fill that spot, even though Joe's the top and making the top level decisions. And so it'll be a lot of fun to watch his journey at Mississippi State, because I'm going to ride Hoove's coattails and say that he'll also be the next athletic director at Oklahoma whenever that time comes.
Mississippi State, too, for whatever reason it is, has been a launching spot for athletic directors. If you look at some of the blue bloods of college football, a lot of them were the AD at Mississippi State at one time. I shouldn't say a lot, but several. They've scooped up the Starkville guy, and they bring him in to be the AD there. So that's kind of, for whatever reason, it's been kind of a launching pad spot. You feel like that's probably the case here for Zac. So we'll see how that looks down the road. I think the good part of it, you hate to lose him if you're an OU fan, but like we're saying, probably means you have Joe C around for a little while longer than maybe most people have thought. So we'll see how that shakes out in the years to come. Shifting over to Jackson Arnold, he won the Gatorade National Player of the Year this week. He beats Arch Manning and Malachi Nelson head-to-head as the other two finalists. So you fans are going to love that. Guy's good. We knew that. He already won the Texas Gatorade Player of the Year, which is probably the most impressive state that you can win. And now he wins the big boy, the national one, and he does it over Arch Manning and over Malachi Nelson. It doesn't get much better than that if you're an OU fan. So just kind of continues to add to the lore of this kid before he's done anything in Norman. He has moved in. I saw the pictures of Jeff Labby carrying his bag saying, "Don't hurt yourself. I will get you into your room." But just continues to. He did everything you could in high school. Basically, he really a very decorated player, and we'll see what he does here at Oklahoma.
This is perfect for Oklahoma fans, isn't it? I mean, You win. Your guy wins the National Player of the Year, and the two guys that a lot of people thought should have been National Players of the Year. One signed with Lincoln Riley after flipping from Oklahoma, and the other one went to Texas, right? And Arch Manning. So the bragging rights for the Gatorade National Player of the Year could not have shaken out any better. And right when everybody's ready to get excited about Gatorade National Player of the Year, I'm going to break these names down for you. Did you guys see my list?
The scouting department at Gatorade in basketball, very good. The scouting department at Gatorade in football, oh boy!
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to throw a couple names at you. Everybody's familiar with these names. Peyton Manning. Wow, what a great pick that was. Kyler Murray. Oh my gosh, they nailed that one. The other 23 quarterbacks who have won this award, or 21, I think, of the 37 have won this award were quarterbacks, and this is the list: Jeff George, Chris Walsh, Ron Powlus, Brock Heward, Tim Couch, Ronald Curry, Chris Lewis, Brock Berlin, Joe Mauer, catcher, Kyle Wright, Mitch Mustaine, John Brantley, Matt Barkley, Garrett Gilbert, Justin Worley, Max Brown, Jacob Eason, Tate Martell, JT Daniels, who are like racing each other to see who can set the record for the most transfers, Jackson Dart, and then Jackson Arnold. That's mind-blowing. Some of those guys, a lot of those guys played in college. A lot of those guys played at a high level in college. And a lot of those guys did absolutely nothing in college or beyond. So it's kind of wild. Don't hang your hats on Jackson Arnold being the greatest quarterback since Peyton Manning, when the only thing they have in common right now is the Gatorade National Player of the Year award.
Yeah, it's a good thing for it to happen. You would rather it happen than not happening. Yep. This award is no guarantee of anything,
right?
Like you just listed through. Here's the big thing. I think the more important thing, the thing that's been undercovered. Jackson Arnold currently has 0 student ID fumbles. Arch Manning has at least 1. So ball security, that has been an issue already in Austin. And I think that if you're looking for something to puff your chest out about, that should be what you're looking at if you're a Sooners fan.
If you want to spin zone it off of that Gatorade for Oklahoma, I would say and I should have maybe done this myself, but slice that group down in terms of guys who also won Elite 11 MVP. I guess you might have a really small group. I think he was only the third guy since 99 or something like that to have won both. So I don't know. You want to give yourself a little bit of a smaller, more exclusive club. Maybe that bears out a little better on the names. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, to beat Manning and Nelson head to head, you got to like that. And like Ryan said, no losses on the ID yet. So he's doing pretty good in that regard. From future Sooner to former now, Jaden Knowles, running back for Oklahoma, who people are very well aware of, Weatherman J. We've talked about him before. A walk-on guy, known for his exploits as a weatherman. We've seen him do that. He even did on the Jumbotron before and things like that. Called it a career this week. He decided to hang it up. He missed his entire last season. I don't think we ever knew for sure what the injury was, so I don't want to say because I don't know for sure. It was undisclosed, but he was out for the entire season with an injury. I think he did suit up in the Cheez-It Bowl, but didn't play. He decided to hang it up, said, calling it a career, looking to listen to my body is how he phrased it. Obviously not a guy who ever played a ton of OU or anything, but he is a fan. I mean, he's memorable because of the weatherman stuff, and we'll always kind of remember Jaden Knowles. And he did talk to us once after his 2-touchdown game against Western Carolina. He'll always have that. He'll always remember that. But wish him the best when I acknowledge that he stepped away this week.
Yeah, he'll be missed in the National Weather Service. Situation up there. I mean, it's in Norman. He's a meteorology student. He's a good one. We've seen his reports. They're very good. He's very talented. He said in his tweet he had to listen to his body. So that tells you right there that, hey, why is he so beat up? He hasn't played in any games. He's one of those guys that goes to practice every day and gives the starting defense a good look because he's a talented running back, gives them a good look to simulate the other team's running back. He's the scout team running back, and he goes in there and gets his body beat up every day from the starting defense to give the defense a good look. So he's one of those guys. Is he going to be missed in the box score? Is he going to be missed in the PFF grades? Is he going to be missed in the game days? Not necessarily. But when you talk about what a scout teamer does to sacrifice time, effort, pay their own way. Of course, most of them are walk-ons. Pay their own way. The time and effort that goes into it, the sweat equity that they put into it, only to make the defense better, right? You got to salute somebody like that. You've got to salute the scout teamers who just love football. If I could do it one more time, guys, I would go back and I would play like 1 week of football to get ready. And if that's a walk-on, great. I love practice. I missed practice. If I could do that one more time, I would do it. So you got to love those guys who love the game so much, who are willing to do all that stuff that I just listed and put their bodies on the line. He's going to have like sore knees for the rest of his life. You know what I mean? And you just got to respect somebody like that.
Yeah, and it's a guy that carried a much bigger scout team role in 2021 as him and Todd Hudson were the two non-scholarship running backs for most of that year behind Kenny Brooks and Eric Gray. And so, I mean, DeMarco Murray had talked a ton about how in the back of his head, he knew he had to cap those guys in practice because what's more important, having them fresh and available on Saturdays or things like that. And so him and Hudson did that even more in 2021. Never really got to factor in, despite the fact that Lincoln Riley with a straight face tried to tell us that Todd Hudson and Jaden Knowles were going to factor in at the start of the 2021 season. Chalked that one up into the Riley column. But no, and he was always a really fun personality. Someone that, like, if he was brought in for anything, you knew you were going to get an electric 5-10 minutes. So I'll miss that because that's always really fun for me when you see those guys that can light up a room where we're all just kind of like, all right, who are we talking to now? Oh, it's Jaden Knowles. Let's pop over there. It'll be a good time.
Yeah, wish him the best. Became a fan favorite and for a reason. So probably next time we see him, he'll be rivaling Tornado Payne and Damon Lane and all the meteorologists and Mike Morgan. It'll be those three and Weatherman J. He's going to get into that big three and battle them for supremacy in the OKC Metro. Wrapping up here with the last little bit of housekeeping. Josh Ellison hit the portal. We already knew that, but he goes to Memphis. Announced that officially. I feel like not a bad spot for him, considering he didn't play a ton at Oklahoma. Obviously got in there here and there, had his impact from time to time, but never was a huge foundational piece of your defense. Ends up it's a G5, but in the American Conference, which is kind of like that middle ground between G5 and Power 5. Pretty solid program. Not bad for Ellison, I think.
Yeah, I think he'll do well. I think he'll do well there. He was a guy that during the pandemic, 2020, I remember him and Jordan Kelly kind of emerging from a group of guys that we didn't really know what they were going to do, who they were, what they had done previously. They hadn't, a big body of work. He was one of those guys that kind of came into his own in that pandemic season. I got him playing 202 total snaps that year. The next year, 2021, he played 175, and then this year he played 140. So he's seen his workload go down. You've seen other guys like Isaiah Coe come in. Perion Winfrey that first year finally got his feet under him, so to speak. Started making an impact on the defensive line. So he's an interior guy, rotational guy. He'll be missed. There's no doubt. He played well. I don't know anything about the next guy they bring in is going to be an upgrade. I wouldn't say that. He's just a guy that wants a chance to come in and be on the field for a lot of plays. I think he's a good football player, and I think he's going to do really well at Memphis.
Yeah, you have to imagine this is one of those really productive conversations as far as just shoot with me straight, tell me where I'm going to be on the depth chart next year. If it's going to be battling for more snaps, less snaps, what's that going to be? Because if not, he's a guy that had actually one of the few guys that had hit the portal, not named Theo East or David Agwebu, who had actually contributed in a meaningful way on the field and has some game tape to go out and have a market. And you saw him land at Memphis. And so what you're seeing with the rest of those kind of rotational or scout team defensive guys or lack thereof is a lot of nothing. And so for him to go out and land in a spot that's shown that they have a development path, things like that, I think that'll be really good for him. And you have to hope for him that he's able to take over more of a starting role as opposed to having to fight for those rotational snaps so that he can just put stuff on film for himself.
Haven't found out where David Agwebu is headed yet. Really interested in that. How big of a landing spot does he garner? I'm very curious to that. We'll let you know on AllSooners.com whenever we get that. Because, like you said, Ryan, I mean, Theo Weiss and Agwebu and Ellison a little bit is really the only guys who had a lot of tape to really show. And you've seen that bear out. Ellison to Memphis, Weiss to Missouri, an SEC program, albeit, probably the smallest one, but an SEC program. Curious where Agwebu kind of fits into that.
What do we get first? David Agwebu's landing spot or a schedule for the Big 12 Conference in 2023?
Agwebu for sure. The Big 12.
For sure.
Dumpster fire. I don't know if that schedule's. I think we might just roll into week 1 next year. Still waiting for the Big 12 to. Where are we going after the non-conference ends? Who knows?
They're just going to schedule it week by week.
Yeah, week by week.
A nice little peek into the dysfunction that has been rampant in the Big 12 for years, which is why Oklahoma and Texas finally said, screw this.
Well, yeah, true. But also true is the fact that you've got the Big 12 is propped up on 2 pillars and somebody has removed those pillars. We don't know exactly when those pillars are going to leave, so you can't build around those pillars until you know how long they're going to be there, all that stuff. So this has been an absolute wreck. It's worst case scenario for the Big 12. They're welcoming in a bunch of new schools and nobody knows who's going to play anybody. Because nobody knows what Oklahoma and Texas are going to do because Oklahoma and Texas aren't confident in what the Big 12 is going to do as they try to exit gracefully. It's just an awkward situation for everybody. We heard back in October, Yormark said it was going to come out the end of November, 1st of December, the schedule. That didn't happen. At that time period, it was the athletic director at Houston, Mohajir. Is that how you say his name, Mohajir? Who he said it'll come out Tuesday, and that wasn't right. And then he amended that later to the end of January, and then you saw the UCF athletic director come out and say, yeah, end of January is what we're targeting. So who knows at this point?
Well, what I imagine is happening is I'm going to go back to The Dark Knight. This is the only movie I reference on this podcast, I think. And where the Joker snaps the pool cue in half, and he's like, we're going to have a little tryout, make it quick, and he throws it down there. I imagine that's what's happening for every Big 12 school. That's like, we get one last cash cow of Oklahoma or Texas coming into our stadium, guaranteed. I imagine that it's a pretty dirty fight for everyone to get at least one of those, and someone's going to hold the lottery ticket with getting them both and be like, we paid our athletic budget this year.
That's a good point, Ryan. They probably need to do away with the idea that these 4 new schools are going to get both Oklahoma and Texas in a 2-year period, and just group Oklahoma and Texas together and say, you'll get Oklahoma or Texas in a 1-year period. We guarantee it. You new guys will get them at home, one of the two in this 2023, because it's starting to look more and more like they're leaving in 2024. So if you can appease the new guys by saying you'll get Oklahoma or Texas at your stadium this fall, that's probably the best you can hope for.
You know, it's bad when the Pac-12 is making you look bad, because they've announced that their schedule's coming out, and they even gave a time. They were like, it's coming out Wednesday at 1 or whatever it was, and it was like, wow, you know it's not good when the Pac-12 is making the Pac-12 look like they're a competent conference that knows what they're doing. That's where we're at right now. It's actually,
are they going to show that schedule reveal on the Pac-12 network?
For 10 people that have the Pac-12 network. It dumpster. I mean, just couldn't be handled worse for the Big 12. This is so stupid. It needs to come out soon. Every other conference is already out. It's really bad. It's bad.
Well, and now you're not going to get the media blitz anyway, because no one cares. We're the NFL playoffs as far as covering the schedule, anything like that. Like, you had this idle time between the national championship game and the NFL playoffs really kicking into high gear, where it's like and oh, by the way, let's flash this bad boy up. Now it's just us sitting here waiting to make travel plans.
Yeah, I mean, you would think at some point that these conferences would take a page out of the NFL's book here and have a schedule release day and make a thing out of it. But instead, it's just this little, nobody knows when it's coming, and then it just kind of happens, and it doesn't make any sense. They're just missing out on coverage and monetary opportunities. But
it's all about the Twitter impressions.
Whatever.
Got to get them Twitter impressions, man.
Because you could the conferences, if they would come together, you could have a special on ESPN or something where they reveal each conferences. I mean, that could be a whole thing. But no, instead we get this where we just don't even know when it's going to happen.
I think I texted this to a friend, but the younger, hipper, cooler thing that your Mark's trying to bring in, there is nothing more younger, hipper, cooler than the Big 12 athletic directors getting together and fighting over the schedule, like you're all in college in the preseason of NCAA 14, trying to line. No, I want Notre Dame on my schedule in week 2 so I can go to the national championship. No, we want them.
Yeah.
There's nothing more, hip and young and relating to the younger crowd than haggling over the schedule in the preseason.
Just
give us a schedule, please. Please do it. All right, we're going to take one last time out here. We'll come back.
Josh is a planner. Josh has been – I've known this about Josh for 2 years now. He wants the plan, and he wants it now. If it's 2023, he doesn't care.
He wants that plan. Guy.
He needs to know where he's going to be on October 8th, 2023.
That sounds like Texas game.
Much respect, Josh.
I would like a schedule. I would appreciate a schedule. I'm a big schedule guy. I like to look at the schedule. I've looked at the basketball schedule and the baseball. I've probably looked at them 100 times. I'm just like mentally, what's the whole next?
What if the Big 12? What if the matrix is that they're trying to apply here? What if the matrix is, well, if we could get Oklahoma and Texas to not play each other, that would free up that weekend to play that other team.
Oh, God.
So, guys, we're gonna not let you play in 2023 so you can play everybody else. What if there's some kind of hang up and OU and Texas are like, you want to bet? You want to bet? Watch this. Because this will be my 20th in a row, and if I don't get the 20, if I don't get to my big round number, I'm going to be very disappointed.
I think OU and Texas might come together and say, bleep you, we are going independent.
Yeah.
Contract be damned in 2023.
Who wants to play OU Texas? They'll put a little list on like Craigslist. Who wants to play OU Texas this week?
They're going to play 10 times because they're like, screw you.
Just have you have OU play UCF, and then you have Texas play Houston at the Cotton Bowl. Just a little double header right there in the Texas State Fair weekend. Just a little double dip at the fair. Why not? 11 a.m. and 5. A little double header action. That'll be a heck of a day for everybody. Hopefully we get the early game in that situation. All right, we'll take a timeout. We'll come back. Other sports we'll hit. We'll talk about a little NFL playoffs this past weekend. Some Sooners doing some good things. Talk about basketball, a little women's hoops as well, of course, and maybe a little diamond sports. Why not on the way out? Next segment, wrapping up here on the AllSooners Podcast. Final segment of the AllSooners Podcast, episode 170. Get through some last few things here, send you on your way. Hit a lot of other sports here in this final segment, but let's first start with the NFL playoffs. First round over the weekend, super wild card weekend. A lot of really good games, as per usual. Lots of Sooners are represented. Again, I think of the 8 teams left, I think only the Jaguars, if I'm correct, don't have an OU player. So almost certainly a former Sooner is going to be getting a ring again this year. Some good performances. CeeDee Lamb caught a touchdown in the Cowboys' win over the Bucs. That was his first playoff touchdown of his career. Hasn't played in a lot of playoff games, just his second one, but his first postseason TD for him. So shout out to CeeDee for getting that done. But like I said, lots of Sooners are still in the running to get a ring. We'll see how it bears out over the next few weeks. What stuck out to you guys from the weekend?
Well, before the playoffs got going, we found out the All-Pro teams, and there's 5 Oklahoma players on the All-Pro team. If you count Jalen Hurts, which you should as a former Sooner, yeah. He wouldn't be where he is today without his 1 year in Oklahoma. So don't even try to pretend that he went straight from Alabama to the NFL. He graduated Alabama, then went to Oklahoma, then graduated from Lincoln Riley's quarterback school into the NFL. Let's be honest. 5 guys, 2 first team, 3 second team, all pros. That's impressive. Josh, how many total guys are playing in the NFL? You said everybody but the Jaguars. How many total guys right now are playing in the NFL playoffs?
That are left or that came in? Because it was 20, I think, coming into the weekend, which was, I think, 8th most of any college. I'd have to look because the Chiefs and Eagles have like 4 or 5 guys each right there. So I can total it up for you real quick.
So it's a bunch of guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting how, Bill Bedenbaugh's got a bunch. We saw a bunch of guys go out, last week. Bengals got a bunch, like you said. The fact that those 2 running backs are still productive at this stage of their career, they're explosive. When one gets hurt, the other one steps in, and they don't miss a beat there in Cincinnati with P. Ryan and Mixon. So that's been interesting to watch. And you're right, there's a ton of Chiefs. Again, we've talked about this. Who's better at their position? Tress Way, who's not in the playoffs right now with the Commanders, or James Washington. Not James Washington.
Winchester.
James Winchester. Yeah, I was thinking of a different. Yeah, James Winchester from Kansas City, the long snapper. Who's better at their position right now? Because both guys are playing at basically an all-pro level. So it's fun to watch these guys go out and apply their college success into NFL success. It's pretty cool.
16 guys. If you
16
count
total.
If you count practice squad and like Sterling Shepard, who's injured out for the season, but 16 guys are on the rosters of the teams left.
Yeah, Sterling was making the rounds on Twitter, firing up the Giants before that big win over the Vikings, kind of in the warm-up line. You look at that Cincinnati-Baltimore game, and you mentioned P. Ryan and Mixon, but the most impressive running performance in that game was Mark Andrews trying to run Sam Hubbard down and almost getting there. But for me, the lasting impression from Sooners in the NFL from Super Wildcard Weekend was Trent Williams ending someone's career at the second level to free up McCaffrey on that big 60-something yard run on the first drive of the game. I was just like, who's that downfield? Oh, of course it's Trent Williams, because who else gets downfield and just absolutely just parts the sea for whether it be Debo or McCaffrey or anyone. That Niners team is fierce.
There's a path to having a championship Sunday that is just loaded with Sooners, because you could have Jalen Hurts, you could have CeeDee Lamb, you could have all the Chiefs guys, Orlando Brown, Creed Humphrey, you could have Joe Mixon and P. Ryan, you could have just OU guys everywhere on championship Sunday. Like I said, I'm pretty sure it's just the Jaguars doing quick elimination here. They don't have a Sooner on their team of the 8 left. So we're going to have and they're probably the least likely Super Bowl champ of that group. So Oklahoma is going to get some Super Bowl rings for their alumni. Looks like this year for sure. All right, shifting over to basketball. Men's hoops, big win on Saturday over West Virginia. You had to have it, and they got it. Late in the game was kind of dicey again as West Virginia closed that gap. It looked a little hairy for a while there, but they do hold on. get a win that you simply had to have to get to 2-3 in conference play. I mentioned, last week on the show that I needed the next three: West Virginia, Bedlam tonight, and then Baylor on Saturday. You got the first step of that. Now Bedlam's tonight, but good start, finding a way to hang on against a West Virginia team that is just, they're like an even worse version of OU in terms of they just lose close games literally every time. They're still 0 in conference play, but all their games have been close. It's just a very unforgiving league. I mean, there's no gimmies in the Big 12. So you take it. You take the wins however you get them.
Yeah, Baylor is unranked for the first time in a long time.
They're ranked now. They were unranked. They're back in. They're 21.
Oh, they were unranked last week. Okay, they're back in the poll.
They're back in.
Yeah, so this is not your typical, murder house Baylor Bear team that you got to go face. You're right, Josh. This stretch is an opportunity for Oklahoma. Oklahoma needs to start building some of those resume type wins. Simple as that. If they don't, and they don't listen, the Big 12. We've said it before. What I can't remember the math. What was the number? Out of 10 teams, they have 10 in the top 26 of the net rankings, something like that. Some insane, out of this world number. The Big 12 is not going to get any easier at any point. This is as easy as the Big 12 gets, and you've got to start racking up some wins.
Yeah, for sure. And Porter Moser talked about it after the West Virginia game on Saturday. What was the big difference for Oklahoma? They got 2 stops in the final minute. That's something they hadn't gotten in any one of their games so far. Because remember that Tech game that they won, they still had to go to overtime after blowing a 13-point lead late in the second half in that one. That'll be key again this evening as we record against Oklahoma State, because Oklahoma State's offense, it might be worse than Oklahoma's as far as consistency in the last 2 or 3 minutes. Because even OU against West Virginia, they went without a field goal for the last 6 minutes and 15 seconds in that game. The offense was totally stagnant. The difference was, West Virginia bailed them out with a couple of really bad fouls with under 3 seconds left on the shot clock. But OU attacked the bucket and got 11 free throws made across the finish there so they can get across the finish line. So need to go up. If we're talking tournament, we've said this a ton. Broken record, I get it. OU's in a worse spot this year than they were last year based purely off the non-conference. So what's something they can make up? Last year they split with the Cowboys. This year, if they want to be serious tournament contenders, they need to beat them twice. Yep. Because Oklahoma State's offense is terrible. It's awful. It's egregious to watch. As far as Big 12 teams goes, this is one of the few that you can say you have an actual opportunity to sweep them if you play 2 good games. The flip side of that, Mike Boynton's been really good in Bedlam, specifically in Stillwater, and Caleb Boone was a bad matchup for Oklahoma twice last year, and if Musa Cisse plays, it's a front court disaster for Oklahoma for what they're trying to do. So it's not a gimme by any means, as nothing is in this league, like Josh said.
Yeah, talking to Moser yesterday, and he was joking, but he was serious in that he's had some fans and his family or whatever kind of say, like, these close games are wearing on them, the fans, and he was like, well, strap in because they're all going to be close. And that's just, and sorry for Ryan, we're trying to write the gamers. You're not going to have a gimme, I don't think, once this entire season, because that's just, this Oklahoma team doesn't have the capability to blow anybody out, but they also hang in with everybody, and that's just the conference. They're just in the conference in general. There's been almost no, not very tight games. Kansas State just beat Kansas last night. I mean, this conference is just loaded. It's nuts. And they're going to add in Houston next year, who's number 1 currently AP poll. They've talked about adding Gonzaga. I mean, they're building a monster here. Brett Yormark, they're putting together a basketball conference for the ages. Certainly here with the Big 12, it's nuts. Bedlam tonight, like we said, in Stillwater. Ryan and I will be there at Gallagher-Iba. We don't hit the road for basketball very often, not that that's that far, but we'll be there in Stillwater tonight. It's an 8 o'clock tip, so we're still like 8 hours from that game starting as we sit here and record now, which hurts me a little bit. It's going to be a late night in Stillwater. I don't think nearly as close as Bedlam football 2021, but it'll be late. And we'll have all the coverage for you tonight, so be sure to watch out for that on AllSooners.com, wrapping up what goes down at Gallagher-Iba. As for the women, they got a very big win against Kansas on Saturday in a ranked matchup. They were struggling. I mean, they were down at half in that game, but they rallied, played well in the second half, and won it. Ryan, you were there. You covered the game. Hoover, I'm sure you watched it, or if you didn't, you've caught up since. This is a good win. I mean, they needed it. It's That's the question with women's hoops right now. This team is that they've proven that they will almost certainly dominate the teams that they should. But the question is, can they actually consistently beat good teams? They lost to Baylor. You beat Iowa State, but they were down their best player. You have a ranked Kansas team come in. You struggle for a half, but you finish strong and win it. That's a good win. Arguably their best win when you consider that Iowa State was missing, their key player there. Arguably their best win of the season so far.
Yeah, you take a look at just their shooting in the first half, 2.5 quarters, basically 25, 28%. Then you're thinking, this is the game, right? This is the game that Jenny Baranchik's high scoring, high octane, up tempo offense is just not hitting. They're going to lose. And what happens? They start hitting shots. Simple as that. They start getting stops. So you combine those two things. Complementary basketball, guys. You get some stops and you hit some shots, and pretty soon you take the lead against a team like Kansas. You got to be a believer, I guess, at this point in what Baranchik has done, and certainly what she's done, but where she's got the program heading. Seems on very good track, very good footing right now because they just keep winning. TCU tonight, I think, at TCU.
They stink. Yeah, you need it.
Yeah.
Probably the worst team in the Big 12.
6-10, 0-5 in conference play, so
yeah.
That should be a win for this Oklahoma team. If this is one of those games that they go in there and they just kind of, so to speak, roll the ball out there and presume that they can win, and they don't, that would be a step backward for this program. That they need to go in there and put their foot on these guys' throats, so to speak.
Yeah, they need to do that, especially with Bedlam for the women's coming up this Saturday. It'll be another doubleheader at the LNC. I think the men play Baylor first at 3, then the women come back at 6 or 6:30. I haven't looked at the times on that. But yeah, I mean, like you said, OU shot 28% in the first half. And what Jenny Baranchik said she was really proud of is she mentioned that Baylor game that they came out and had a similar poor shooting performance, and it affected everything, and they never were able to dig out of that. What did OU do? They said, okay, we're not hitting shots, so let's lock in defensively. Maddie Williams talked about how the way that they played, everything starts with defense. So they started to get those stops more frequently in the third and fourth quarter, got out and run, easy buckets, see the ball go through. Then the offense heats up again. And I think the most impressive thing is they dominated Kansas on the boards despite being undersized. I mean, Nevaeh Tot went down there and had she either had 7 or 9 rebounds, and between Maddie Williams and Nevaeh Tot, one of them had 7 and one of them had 9. I've got that mixed in my head. But it was a really impressive performance. And now suddenly you look up, and this note may have slipped under the radar, but Oklahoma, Jenny Baranchik has them as the highest ranked team in the Big 12 in the AP poll. First time since 2009 that Oklahoma has come in as the highest ranked Big 12 team in the AP poll.
Was that a Final Four year?
Believe so.
2009, 08, 09, or 9, 10. Yeah, good point. Yeah, that's a good point, Ryan.
Tell you what, teams on track to have home games in the tournament again, like they did last year. If they can keep it up, and looking like a chance, certainly, like for the point that Ryan just made, and to try and win the Big 12 in the regular season. They certainly are in play for that. Got to win tonight, like Hoover was saying. TCU, they have losses this year to Sam Houston, Rice, Missouri State, and they lost to West Virginia by 32. So yeah, you need to take advantage tonight and roll. You don't want to be sweating this one out in Fort Worth. Anytime you win on the road in college hoops, especially on the midweek games, you need to go do it. And so we'll see what they happen tonight. They play 6:30 tip, so you can pretty much watch that almost the whole game. Probably should be over if OU does what they should by the time the men tip off at 8 in Stillwater.
Currently tied for first in the Big 12 standings, too, with Texas.
Yep, with Texas. When do they play Texas? Look that up real quick. I got their schedule here. They play the Longhorns in Austin a week from today. So that's going to be a big one. That's going to be a very tantalizing game towards what the standings look like down the stretch. So keep an eye out for that. This team's fun. Keep an eye out for them. We'll see what they do the rest of the way. All right, wrapping up here with some diamond sports. Why not? A little bit on the way out. Those seasons are rapidly approaching. Baseball is less than a month away now. Softball is just like a couple of weeks. It's really, really soon. It's soon because we're getting preseason polls for the softball team. Number 1 in D1 softball, and they were picked to win the Big 12 today. Stunner. Shocker. Absolute shocker. But Oklahoma State, number 3 in that D1 softball poll. It's kind of insane that the Bedlam teams are right there in the conversation for the two best teams in the country. That's wild, and that's really, really fun. I'm looking forward to seeing those matchups this year again.
Yeah, and the other Big 12 College World Series opponent is the other team in the Big 12 that's ranked. Texas is number 14. I looked it up on Oklahoma's schedule. They play number 2, number 3, number 4, number 6, number 7, number 11, number 14, number 16, all the way down to like number 21 in the preseason poll. OU's going to have to earn it if they not that they haven't ever earned it, but I'm just saying this year's schedule is absolutely stacked like it usually is, except maybe a little bit more. The schedule stacked. So if OU wins the national championship this year, and I don't care if they win, end up losing like 10 or 12 or 14 games, if they win the national championship against this schedule, that's as impressive, I think, as last year where they only lose 3 games against a demanding schedule, but maybe not as good as a schedule as this one.
Yeah, the as is tradition with the Big 12 stuff, your preseason poll comes out one day, which means the all Big 12 teams come out the next day. So we're looking for that on Thursday. I would anticipate it to be littered with Oklahoma Sooners. You mentioned Oklahoma State. They did an incredible job in the transfer portal rating Alabama. The unfortunate thing for Kenny Gajewski and the Cowgirls is that Oklahoma did the best in the transfer portal, getting Sydney Sanders from Arizona State, who's going to come in. She's going to play first base. She was a finalist for NFCA Freshman of the Year last year, only lost that thing to, yep, you guessed it, Jordy Ball, which means that when you're looking at Oklahoma's lineup, just let's go through the middle of the field. Jordy Ball, she's your reigning Freshman of the Year. At first, she'll have the person that she won that award over. Behind her, she'll have Tiare Jennings, who won the Freshman of the Year 2 years ago. And in center, also a finalist for Freshman of the Year. That's the youth and experience that Oklahoma has. It should be another march to the WCWS. But this year, the expectation, actually, it was the expectation last year. It should have been a Bedlam Champ series, and OSU didn't really hold up that end of the bargain, dropping those 2 games to Texas. Even more so this year, it should be a Bedlam Champ series because OSU's as deep as anyone, and that's including UCLA, Alabama, all of them.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's coming up really, really soon, and Ryan will have a lot of softball coverage for you, obviously all season, but leading up to the start of the year, he's got a whole preview thing scheduled, and we'll talk about that more when it gets a little bit closer, but Ryan covers that team really, really well, so keep an eye out for that. Wrapping up with a little bit of just a hair of baseball here on the way out. D1 baseball poll did come out. Oklahoma not ranked, which some people may be like, whoa, runners up last year. What gives? They lost a lot. They're replacing a lot. I happen to think they're still going to be pretty good. Skip did a really good job, again, adding a lot of JUCO guys. If you look at the rankings of like who had the best JUCO classes and transfer, like Oklahoma's always really high on those lists. They're going to be really good again, but it just, when you're making a poll like that, there's so much unknowns. You're replacing your entire rotation, all that stuff you already know. They're going to leave them out. So we'll see what happens. Baseball America poll hasn't come out yet. They're probably going to be unranked in that one as well. Obviously, Big 12 polls, all that stuff will be coming out soon, probably the next week or so. We'll see where Oklahoma fits in that. But baseball season is coming up before you know it. Less than a month until opening day. So we're getting there. We're getting there.
Josh, I want your take on the odds that Skip points a finger at D1 baseball not ranking them if they make the College World Series again this year. So you guys at D1 baseball didn't rank us.
I hope so.
Those guys over at AllSooners believed in us all the way, but you guys at D1 baseball didn't believe in us.
I hope so.
We posted that stuff in our locker room and we talked about it every day.
It's only fair.
Well, I was going to say, as is tradition, where would you guys have ranked last year's Oklahoma team and last year's SEC? I would go with at least second behind Ole Miss. And maybe third in the regular season behind Tennessee, even though Tennessee crashed all the way out. Tournament time, though, I probably would have taken him second behind Ole Miss. That's just me, though. I don't know baseball as well as you guys do.
That's the disgusting thing. Look at that D1 baseball top 25. It's got a whole crap load of SEC. That conference, I don't want to be hyperbolic, but I don't think there's any conference that dominates any one sport like the SEC does baseball. It is absurd. I mean, obviously, we were there in Omaha last year, who, if you include OU and Texas, 6 of the 8 teams there were SEC teams. It's insane. It's insane. It's a different world. I don't know if you guys saw it, too. They just posted, NCAA did, the attendance numbers from last year, the top 50 highest attended baseball. Yeah. I think the top 10, 9 SEC. Oklahoma was 45th. Now, part of that is Eldo Mitchell Park is small. even if Eldon Mitchell Park was sold out every single game, literally every game, I think Oklahoma can only get up to like 24th or something because their capacity is not that big. But it lets you know where Oklahoma needs to improve. That's fans got to step up too. And then when you make that kind of move, because it's a different world there. The only team in the top 10 that was not SEC was actually Oklahoma State, which again, part of that is capacity. O'Brate is very big, great ballpark, seats a lot more people, but that plays a role into it. So it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. Maybe just 1 or 2 more years in the Big 12 before you make that move. So there's still some time to gear some things. They have those big donations. Remember last year when that run happened, and they got facilities coming. So we'll see how that stuff shakes out. But baseball will be here for it as well. Looking forward to that. So,
Josh, we'll throw out one quick note before we sign off. The women's gymnastics team, who has a huge following in Norman, off to a 4-0 start this season. They beat Michigan, UCLA, Big Ten opponents, Michigan and UCLA, right? They also beat Auburn in the Super 16 kind of preseason, get your season started thing. And then I watched this last week, I guess earlier this week, Monday. They beat number 10 ranked LSU in Baton Rouge. And that was impressive because that place was the Pistol Pete Maravich Activity Center was absolutely packed. They said the crowd was 12,000, but as they pan back and you can see the athletes competing, it looked like 25, 30,000 people. It was insane. Every seat taken. And OU went into a hostile environment, so to speak, and won. So your defending national champ is off to a great start, 4-0 on the season, with a pretty good schedule coming up.
Yeah, for sure. KJ Kindler has that thing rolling, and that's capitalizing on the year where, if you remember at the national championship post game, where Oklahoma, quote unquote, wasn't supposed to have won last year, capitalizing on that, coming back in. I'm not one to cut out KJ Kindler and that crew. They're electric.
Home opener Sunday against Utah, if you guys want to go to that.
I got to think that gymnastics may be one of the sneaky hard ones on the road, too, when you're trying to do your routines and stuff and you have that many people just, screaming at you. That probably underrated. So to go on the road and LSU, which we know is just psychos everywhere and everything. Impressive stuff. So that's one of the more dominant programs at OU, quite frankly, that they have. Joe C has. All right, I think that's it. Covered a lot of ground. The show ended up being pretty long considering. But thanks so much for tuning in. As always, we'll be back next Wednesday, wrapping up all the latest as the transfer portal finally closes and we start to gear toward look ahead to spring ball, winter workouts, all that good stuff. Obviously, other sports, basketball wrap up, and softball and baseball seasons continue to approach. We'll talk about it all like we always do on the AllSooners Podcast. You can catch that show next week on iTunes, Spotify, Google, iHeart, wherever you get your podcasts. If you have an Amazon-enabled device, just say, Alexa, play the AllSooners Podcast. Also post on our website, allsooners.com. Click on the playlist on your phone, your tablet, or your computer, and you can watch all the shows on whose YouTube page, John Hoover Media. That's it for us. For Ryan Chapman and John Hoover, I'm Josh Callaway. We'll catch you guys next time.